Welcome to Music Ed Tech Talk, a podcast exploring music, education, technology, and the intersections between them, with a special focus on the productive and creative process. I'm your host, Robby Burns. Thanks to my sponsor this week, Scale Exercise Play-Along Tracks. With me today is Dr. Frank Buck, back joining the show for, I think, like the fourth or fifth time now.
Robby, it's always a pleasure to be here. You know, it's like just having this great conversation about the intersection of technology and music and helping people get better and just make their lives better.
While I definitely have done my fair share of making things creatively using technology, I feel like the place where it's really benefited my teaching life the most is in the just in my enhanced organization and productivity. And so this will always and forever be a topic that I revisit on the show because someone might not need to ever like arrange a piece in their life. You probably will, but you might never need to like take out a digital audio workstation or a scoring application for a very, very major project, but you will most definitely need to wrangle lots of notes and tasks and communicate with other people effectively. So this is an always evolving topic. And what I love about you, as I've said before, is like I'm really like into like native Mac and iOS apps that leverage those system, like the benefits of those system operating systems. You have a very sort of like web-based approach. You use a lot more cross-platform stuff that is also tends to have free options. So it's like great to get that perspective because teachers will of course always resonate with free and easy and on the web.
Free and easy are two of my very favorite four-letter words.
Do you mind if I just real quick say a couple of news items?
Go ahead, yeah.
And then if you want to bounce in and have any opinions on any of these, I welcome them. I feel like I'm going to plan to talk about some of these in more length in the future, but I like to just every now and then kind of like say a couple of quick updates that are happening in technology and music. In the last episode, Daniel Spreadbury from Dorico came on and teased that an update to the iPad version of Dorico 2 is coming out that will allow the feature Open in Place, which is basically the idea of that the documents you open from your file system don't any longer need to like sort of duplicate a copy that lives inside of the app. Now, if you have a file inside of Dropbox or iCloud or Google Drive, you can open it from that service, make edits to your score, and then save it straight back to that service. I've been beta testing it, and I think it works great. And it's making you use the app on the iPad like 100% more often. Musescore has announced, speaking of music notation software, they've announced an alpha. They are currently having some people look into their forthcoming Musescore 4 update, which is going to, I think they've sort of marketed and teased this as something that's much more competitive with the professional options like Dorico, Sibelius, and Finale. So that's kind of exciting that that's coming soon. Craft, the application that I shared this note with you in, has had a bunch of new features. They did a whole episode on Craft with David MacDonald. I'll link that in the show notes. They have now new templating features, and I've been testing. They have a new plugin architecture where people can create add-ons to the app, and I've been testing a handful of those. They're really nice. There's a great one actually that works with Todoist that will actually allow you to sort of like take notes in what's called your daily note, and it'll actually take the things that you create as a task, and it will two-way sync them between your Todoist account and your Craft account if you want to like sort of have them in context of your notes, but also in an application like Todoist. So that's cool. They also announced that their web editor is like now totally available to everyone. So anyone who is not a Mac or an iOS user can now use Craft on the web. I think it's a great Google Docs competitor. Ableton has released a plugin for Ableton Live. It's called it's a Microtuner, and I didn't even know this. There's such thing as a Scala file, which is basically a file that can work with a plugin such as Microtuner, and you drag and drop it into the plugin, and then like it basically changes the tuning system of your MIDI keyboard. So like you can split the octave 13 way. I mean, I didn't know this. There's like 4,200 free Scala files on the web. I'll link my short blog post about this plugin and also like a link to the to where Ableton promoted where you can find these like Scala files, but like you can do nearly every kind of tuning temperament that you can imagine, and I'm pretty sure it works on audio and MIDI software instruments, which is tracks, which is cool. And then lastly, Audio Hijack 4 has come out for the Mac. Previous episode of this show featured Paul Kafasis, their CEO, and talking about all sorts of ways that music educators can take advantage of their excellent audio utilities. And Audio Hijack 4 takes this. Audio Hijack is kind of like, I call it like a Swiss Army knife of audio tools for the Mac. And their new 4th version releases automation. So it's not like you don't even have to open the app anymore. You can just like have certain pre-programmed. You actually uses the either JavaScript or the Siri Shortcuts app to allow you to sort of like take these really easy little steps that are inside of its app, things that the app can do, and basically like add them to integrate them with other steps that other apps on your system can do. I'll give an example. For setting up of this show, I need Craft to see our shared document. I need Audio Hijack to start recording. I need my Zoom call to open, and I need the Zoom call to launch. And then I need my phone and everything in Do Not Disturb. Well, I created a single shortcut in the Shortcuts app for Mac that just has that as a string of actions. And now with this new version of Audio Hijack, I have a nice little action that says start. And then I have like sort of you make like pre-made sort of devices, so to speak, that sort of like do different things. So like you can create a device that records the output of an app. You can create one that just records the input of your microphone. That's what I'm using right now. And now the running of one of these different devices that you create is now something, you can run it from the menu bar or from a shortcut. You do not even need to like go into the app to do it. I've covered, I'll link some blog posts where I've covered more like what Audio Hijack looks like. I think once people kind of see it in the flesh, see how it's got this like graphical user interface where you sort of like drag and these little Lego building blocks together of like where your inputs and outputs are going. A lot of people find that very attractive. And that's what Rogue Amoeba does. They make apps that feel intuitive and excellent to use on the Mac. So, I got through it all.
Exciting stuff, and a couple of things that jumped out to me, like what you were just talking about there with that automation, setting something that can do a number of little tasks that are not hard to do, but the hard thing is remembering to do them all. And it's kind of time consuming to do them all, but to just be able to set it and forget it and run that little routine, and it handles it for you. So, I'm all about automation. And then, with Craft, with it being able to talk to Todoist, as we'll talk about in this interview, I'm real big on my digital task list. The more I can build into that so that I've got one place to look that's going to be my marching orders for the day. I'm all about that stuff. And, I appreciate you doing this kind of thing because, in people's busy day-to-day lives, we're running rehearsals and we're planning for a concert and all these things going on. How do you stay on top of the tech that's going to make your job easier, but you don't have time to keep up on the trend? So it's good to have people like you that are out there, reporting on this kind of stuff.
I think some of these tools are admittedly like I have become kind of like a power. I want to actually get to this kind of after we go through some to-do and note related topics, but I want to kind of later come back to something we've talked about before, which is like easy web stuff versus like sort of power tools. Like because I'm on the Mac, I've sort of slipped into these. I found these apps that are like really, really power user kinds of versions of the apps where I started with, which offer lots more features. And that's sort of the reason why I've kind of gone down that track here. But a lot of the tools that attract me are also the ones that are just the easiest to use. Like Craft is an application that once you start throwing data in it, you realize that it can be, and I know you use Evernote kind of in the same way, it can be this sort of not only a place where you throw everything, but it can be kind of like a network of thought, like where certain ideas and thoughts can connect to other ideas and thoughts, and where even your ideas and thoughts can connect to tasks in a totally separate app. And then those can connect to your email and your calendar. And you sort of, that's an attractive thing to me. But on the surface, Craft is just like a totally friendly design that immediately just like screams out to the user, like put stuff in me. Like I'm here to look pretty and help you see your day in a saner way. So, and it's weirdly straddling this line between like a creation document tool, but also like a task planning tool, but also like you can, one of the things I really like about it is you can publish any of your notes to the web, which is a great Evernote feature as well. And they're sort of like adding these Google Docs, slowly adding Google Docs things. Like you were able to comment on some of these. I think later you'll be able to more appropriately have two people in the same document without both users having that native craft app.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, I feel like we're already kind of like getting into the detail here. I feel like the first thing I want to talk about is like you have a new book.
I absolutely do. Yes. Yes. I've had 3 out there already. The most recent one being Get Organized, Time Management for School Leaders. Second edition that came out 2015, 2016, somewhere in there. That if I had to go back and rewrite it, I'd write everything just the same. Everything that was relevant then is relevant now. And I wrote it from the standpoint of wanting to write something that would be eternal. So I stayed away from talking about specific tools. For example, you won't find the word Apple in that book anywhere. You won't find the word Google. The only thing I talk about is I did devote a chapter to Evernote because I felt like that was going to be out there. So that was back then. So the pandemic hits. Well, my publisher contacted me and said, Frank, COVID and so much has gone virtual. Technology has really gone from being something that, in some places was nice to have. Now it wasn't nice to have. If it weren't for technology, a lot of us wouldn't have had school, period. And so what they said was, would you consider a new edition of your book or writing a whole new book that just hits the technology piece? So I was all about it. So whereas the last book was one that I wanted to be eternal, that you could read 50 years from now and it would be relevant. I rolled the dice on this one with Get Organized Digitally, The Educator's Guide to Time Management, which came out right at the 2022, January. Boom, Happy New Year. We really rolled the dice, and it's talking about the things that are out there right now, the specific pieces of software that I use. Most of it is for free, and the real how to do it so that it's very, very nuts and bolts. Is there going to need to be a new edition in the future? Absolutely, because things are going to change. I'm surprised there haven't already been things that have changed.
I remember when my book came out, like Microsoft bought Sunset, one of the to-do apps in my to-do section.
Yeah.
By the time it published,
Wunderlist.
That's the one.
Yeah. Yeah. People loved Wunderlist, and Microsoft bought it and killed it. Yeah. Yeah. And I've experienced doing a workshop, and during a live workshop, I'm demonstrating something that had like sunset that day and, had no idea. And so here's this notice, hey, we've gone belly up.
But something I like about your new book, especially like right from the very beginning, is that you're really thorough about, upfront about the why, like why and where does this fit. And I think that if you're someone reading it, like understanding the why and then sort of treating the nuts and bolts less of trying to think of nuts and bolts less as a like, where do I click, but more of a how does this work? Actually, once you've used lots and lots of these tools, you start to develop underlying ideas of the principles of how software wants to be used based on like what it's showing you on the screen. And I think as a teacher who might be feeling like a little bit lukewarm or even scared or nervous about approaching this area or your book, like once you like have used a couple of these tools, they really all in many ways do ask to be used similarly with the
absolutely.
There's lots of details, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like you get a new student information system. Well, you may not have even logged in yet, but you're already thinking, I'll be able to run class rosters. I'll be able to run report cards. I'll be able to run an honor roll. It's just figuring out in this particular piece of software exactly how is that done. So one of the things that I try to make clear in the book is, hey, when something goes belly up, okay, good things are replaced by better things. So don't worry about getting into a piece of software and thinking, oh gosh, this might not be around forever. What am I going to do if it goes belly up? What I've experienced is when something goes belly up, by the end of the day, I have found something else that does that same thing plus more. And within a day, I'm up and going on this new thing. and through my blog, am able to tell other people what I've gone to.
Yeah, I think one of the things I'm noticing too, which is kind of a trend I'm noticing in some of the productivity software, is as I kind of hinted at with the whole Craft plugin thing, there's like extensibility. So the ability for users of the application who are savvy to add features, to write features, and then like the regular user like myself can within the app install these as plugins. Like, hey, do the Todoist thing where you sync my tasks from Todoist back and forth. And then the other trend is, I think that a lot of these companies are like aware that users are concerned with this very problem you're highlighting, and so there's a lot of effort to make it easy to get data out. And I'm looking at Craft here. A great example of this is they have what do they call the feature? They call it something, but basically it's just export. It's just a fancy way of saying, hey, here's all the apps, and you can get them in the sidebar, and you like a long list of really popular apps, and you can click a button, and then the note you're looking at, or notes, if many are selected, will just go whoop straight into a different application that you want to move them to. And I think that's great. Really great.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Evernote is one that I have used on and off for years and years and years. And I do use an application right now on my Mac called DEVONthink, which is not an app that I recommend for the faint of heart, but it is very powerful and capable. But it was able to just scoop up my whole Evernote library. You know, I had to kind of sit and stare at a little progress bar for a while and watch a TV show. But it, you know, did bring all of my Evernote database from like 8-9 years into it in a way that's like fully text searchable alongside all my other stuff that I'm doing with it. So yeah, it's there, you don't have to fear the product going away.
Absolutely not. And I think as long as you're sticking with the things that are major, that have a lot of people using them, then whoever the competitors are going to make it very easy to get that data there. You know, everybody, every notes app known to man is going to want to make it easy to import your Evernote library into it. I mean, it's just the way it is.
Well, I don't want to get too far down this without giving you the opportunity to sort of say, first and foremost, anything you want to about the book. You know, what is the sort of the breadth of what the book covers, and then who exactly is this book for?
All right. Well, it's the book is in 10 chapters, but I've divided it into 3 major sections. The first section is on digital task management. And, you know, there are a number of good ones out there, but I use as an example the one that I use, Remember the Milk. So in that, you know, in the book, you're going to get, you know, here are the one-time settings, you know, just square one. Here's how to set it up. Here's my strategy for using it so that you can really see yourself of how it's going to help you navigate the day. And I put that at the first of the book, and it's 3 chapters devoted to some aspect of using a digital task manager, because for me, that's sort of the center of my productivity system, that I really want everything to feed in there so that that digital task list becomes my single source of truth, that it's the thing that's going to guide my day. And if it's, I need to work on this document that's housed over in Google Drive. Well, that's great. In my digital task list, let me see a to-do that says, work on the XYZ document. And then in the notes section of that task, there's a link right to the document. So I'm not having to worry about what folder did I put that in, and what's going to be my trigger to remind me to go to that folder and work on that report. Well, I'm just working down the task list. It's telling me what to do and where to get the resources to do it within one click. And all my repeating tasks are there. You know, big aha for me, my very first semester as a junior high band director, how many little bitty tasks are, you know, just to play in a junior high band concert, how many little tasks are involved. But the good news is, if you capture all of them, next time you do a concert, it's the same tasks. So with a digital task list, we're just putting them in there one time, saying repeat annually. And so all the things you're doing, recruiting, you know, you want to take the band over to the elementary school. Well, you got to get permission from that principal, from your principal. Get it on the appropriate calendars. Get the buses reserved. Let the lunchroom lady know. I mean, the little tasks go on and on. And if you leave it to your memory, you're going to forget something. You are going to forget. With a digital task list, you throw it on there once, you don't have to worry about it anymore. You just do what's on the list.
Yeah, a lot of these apps even have templating features. I use OmniFocus, and they've got a really cool. It uses like you write out, basically you just open up a text file or a text document, and you basically write the name of the project with a colon, and then you put a dash and a space before every subtask of the project, and then it is able to interpret that as like a project in its app with tasks inside of it. You can even like do fancy little placeholders for dates and stuff, and then it'll prompt you like, hey, when is this due? And you tell it when it's due, and then it can actually be like sort of predetermined to like align all of the subtasks relative to that due date. So like 3 days, you tell it it's due April 20th, it'll make that one step of the thing will be like due 3 days before the date, April 20th, and then so on and so on. And that's just like a text file that I keep on my computer. I can run it and do all that fancy scripting, or I can just copy and paste it into my project list, and it'll do that too. So yeah, really, really cool stuff that like you do it once, but then you don't forget little things. Like I have just one little like baby thing. Like we at our concert, we section off the sections of the auditorium where the kids are going to sit while they're watching the other ensembles perform, and we don't want to forget the streamers that we use, tape to the sides of the seats to section those off. It's such an easy little thing to forget, but it's always showing up on my to-do list the day of, because I'm never, of course, thinking about it until actually I need to, which is adding sanity to every day before. But then at that moment, about 2 hours before I hop in the car to drive to the high school, grab the streamers.
Yeah, yeah. And you don't have to, wake up in the middle of the night going, gosh, what did I forget? You just work the list. And when people look at my list, and probably when people look at your list, they would just laugh at some of the dumb, dorky things that are on there. I mean, you're not seeing things like solve world hunger. No, it's more stuff like buy shoestrings. It's just little things, but they're things that you wanted to do, and you want to get them done in the quickest, most efficient fashion you can, and that's the way to do it.
You have a great, which you've shared before, but I invite you to share it again, kind of like a great short checklist of features that a to-do app should have. And I think one of those features is like this due date and deadline. I don't know if on your list is defer dates, but for me, it's like a date that I can start working on it and a date that absolutely I will not survive the hour if it is not done by.
Most, I don't know, but many of the programs will have a start date and a due date. Others will have just a due date. And so what I teach is the due date, so that no matter what anybody has, it is going to be applicable to them. So I just use the due date, DUE, but for me, it's really more like DO. This is the date that I want to see that thing.
Right.
And if there's a drop dead deadline, then I just put that as part of the name of the task. I just put it in parentheses, male income tax, open parentheses, deadline, April 15th, close parentheses.
Right.
And then it'll have a due date of whatever date I want to put that thing in the mail. And so if I start monkeying around with the date, I've still got that drop dead deadline as part of the name of the task. So, but yeah, when I ask people, do you use a digital task list? And when they say yes, and you say, well, what do you use? You get all these answers like, well, I just put everything on my calendar because I just don't have any other place to put it. Or I use that little yellow legal pad looking thing on my iPhone. Well, that's fine for the grocery list for this afternoon, but what about the thing that you need to do 2 weeks from Thursday or 2 months from Thursday? Where do you put that kind of thing? So for me, it's got to have the ability to put a date on that sucker and somehow sort the list by date so that I can see, here are my things for today. Here are my things for tomorrow. Here's next week, and and on and so forth. Second, it's got to have repeating tasks. And for a long time, Google Tasks did not have repeating tasks, so I could not recommend that to anybody if you couldn't have repeating tasks. Third, it's having the ability to have a note section for that task. Like I talked about earlier, I want to work on this particular report. Give me a place to put information about how to do that task or a link to something else. And about a year ago, Todoist added to their free plan that ability. Before, it was part of their paid plan, but they made it part of the free plan. Fourth, the ability to search, because that's one of the great things about anything digital, the ability to search instead of flipping pages in a notebook trying to eyeball stuff. Fifth, that it syncs across all devices, which, if I get up from my computer and the only place I have my to-do list is on my computer, when I get up from my computer, I've gotten up from my to-do list. Likewise, if it's only on my phone, I'm typing everything with two thumbs on a piece of glass. I want it to be able to sync back and forth instantly. Number 6, I want it to communicate with my email, so that when I get an email that is something I need to do, I can just forward it using a special little email address, forward it over to the task list, just now delete the email. And 7th, the ability to talk to your phone, voice input, and just be walking down the hall, think of something you need to do, pull out your phone, speak the task, and it's right into Remember the Milk or Todoist or OmniFocus or whatever your task list of choice is. So I'm looking for those 7 things, and if it's got those 7, and I list those in the book, then that's one that's going to work for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. You just made me think of a couple quick things. One of them is some of these features can, if you find a to-do app that doesn't have all of them, because I agree with you. I mean, these are all like table stakes for a to-do app. I would even, there's a couple things that for me personally, I don't think everyone needs, but like the templates have become such an essential part of my workflow that now for me it is. One thing is that, like, for example, the email thing, a lot of these services I've noticed that ability is a paid feature. But there's a lot of email apps that actually have built that feature in. So, for example, I'm using an app that is available on Mac, iOS, and Android called SparkMail, and actually made by Riadel, I believe is how they're pronounced, Ukrainian developers. I gave them a shout out on the last episode, and their free version of Spark, their paid version is sort of like enterprisey. It's like meant for teams. So what that means is that a lot of the really, really powerful stuff that an individual can take advantage of is all just baked into the free tier of the app. And it's native on every platform. So it's not like doing web stuff, connecting to the internet once your emails get pulled, down. It's all happening there on your phone or on your computer. And they have in the settings, you can link it to Evernote, OmniFocus, Todoist. Basically, you link all of your note and task and project apps to Spark, and then you have even like nice little swipe. You can customize the swipe. So like I have like a right swipe on an email message. We'll just send it to OmniFocus, and then if I swipe a little further, it can go to Evernote, and that makes it so fast to just be anywhere in the world, and like triaging my email super fast, getting it down to nothing in my email. Everything is kind of delegated out to where I can more effectively deal with it. Like, is it something I need to act on? Goes to OmniFocus. Is it something I need to reference? Evernote.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'll say too, your note, you made me think with your note field comment. What I do a lot of times is actually the note apps have most of them. I don't know if you've ever made of like a 6-point list for note apps, but one of mine for any productivity app is basically that you can take a URL link to any piece of data you're looking at in your app and then link it somewhere else. So like right now, Craft. I'm also using something called Obsidian, which is sort of like a PKM tool.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
You basically can hit a key command. Mine is Control-Option-Command plus the letter C for copy, and then the link straight into that data goes to my clipboard, and then I'll put actually that in the notes field of my task. Because while my OmniFocus is kind of a single source of truth, for me it's like more of a single source of like action. I kind of want to be able to also then search separately the thoughts or the notes, or I'm sorry, the notes or the documents, anything that's sort of like relevant or adjacent to it. I kind of want it to live in its own permanent space, but through that contextual linking, a task can be linked to a note can be linked to a task can be linked to a document, so on.
Yeah. I mean, I love that kind of thing, so that the days of copy and paste are over. Because the information over there changes, and if you copied and pasted, well, the information over there changed, but the information you pasted somewhere else is now still the same as it was. The ability to link back and forth. Like a lot of people don't know, there's so many people use Gmail. I mean, the world uses Gmail.
Yeah.
But how many people realize that every email in Gmail has its own URL? So, I'm going to be talking to that parent on Thursday, and I want to have this particular email in front of me when I talk to that parent. Well, instead of, when the parent comes in, searching your email for that email, just while you have it up, grab the URL and put it in the notes section of a task, or put it in the description section of that little calendar appointment. And then when the parent comes in, here in the appointment, here may be a whole list of things you're discussing with that parent, or it may be a task that you have, and in the notes section, here's a whole list of things you're going to discuss with that parent, and there's the link to that particular email. Click, and there it is for you.
Yeah, and there actually is. I love that so much, and there's like an interesting thing happening with like all this. So many of these tools are web-based, and so this sort of is, even though a lot of the web-free tools are maybe more accessible or to more people because they're cross-platform and they have these free tiers, but I don't want to say that like only the nerdy, powerful paid stuff that I'm using, like OmniFocus, is powerful, because there actually is, I feel like, a power user angle to a lot of these web tools, and it's exactly what you're saying. Like when something lives on a website, there's this feeling of like, okay, like that has a place that it exists, and I can get to it kind of like from any place. Like anything can be linked to anything else. Now there is sort of on iOS and the Mac, there's like something called a callback URL, which is basically the same idea, but that can URL link you into another local thing on your system. For example, I can say, here's my Obsidian note. It's just a simple text file on my computer. Here's a URL, but instead of going to a website where that note lives, it's actually just like referring to a local piece of data. Yeah, but I feel like these things are really, really powerful when you start stringing them together. And for me, like people think I'm like spending all my time like just putting files inside of folders, and the reality is that I'm actually like far more sparsely organized than that. It's more like I have all this like sort of disparate data, and I like create trails of breadcrumbs between them, or use very powerful search to find them. It's not even like super organized, I feel like, when I stop to look at how it's all laid out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like with Evernote, you don't have folders inside folders inside folders inside folders. You've got notebooks. Notebooks that live in stacks, but then that's it. And of course, you can add tags to things, but so you're relying on, I know what notebook it's in, and even if I don't know what notebook it's in, the search is so powerful. That here's this particular word that's kind of a weird word that's not going to show up in very many things. All right, let me search for that word, or that word and so-and-so. It's almost like the ability to think of what you want, stick your hand in a big barrel of index cards, and pull out exactly the right index card. It's that sort of thing, and it's eerie how intuitive the notes programs have gotten.
And not only the notes stuff, but also the web-based document creation tools as well. Like Google Apps come to my mind, the slides, the sheets, and the Google Docs. I mean, these are all things that, they have like URL addresses to them, first of all, so that similarly you can sort of easily link them together.
Yeah. Like here's a slide of a slide in a deck of Google Slides, and it's got its own URL. And so in a task or in a calendar appointment, you could put the link to a slide in a particular presentation and click and you're there.
I actually do that. So I've got in my daily note, which I'm currently using. The daily note feature exists in Craft and Obsidian. I'm using it in Obsidian mostly. It's basically this idea of a note that's just like a regular note, but it can be associated with a calendar interface. So you can sort of like see your notes, and then those notes can contain links to other notes that you have created on that day. And I sort of just use it as like a scratch pad where I sort of have an outline of everything I'm going to do. I put announcements for each class, and then I also take notes on each class so that they're associated with that day. And one thing I'm doing is right now I'm working through some Google Slides presentations that are provided by our county, the people who wrote the curriculum for our current general music classes. And I stop on slide like 37 of like 80 in the Google slide one day. And so I just put a little note in Obsidian and I say like, hey, I stopped today on this slide, start on this one tomorrow, and then link straight to that slide right from my daily notes. So I'm sort of seeing things on a timeline, which I think is more how people think of like sort of what I did each day, which is, to be honest, like fantastic. So good.
Yeah, absolutely. And our tools change. And our procedures have to change. If it was 30 years ago, wherever you left off yesterday would have been where you left off in a book. And you would have put a bookmark there or a Post-it note there, which would make it easy for you to pick up next time right there. Well, the enemies of technology go, well, now, gosh, you can't do that anymore. How are you going to put a bookmark on something that's digital and lives in your computer? Well, exactly like you're doing. That it has a URL. You put that URL where you're going to see it at the appropriate time. Click, and you're right there. It's the same idea. It's just using a different tool.
I'll give an app shout out here too for all my Mac people who are out there. For if you're using apps that are like just system apps that are pre-installed or that are not on the web, there's a cool app I discovered. It's a paid thing, but it's called Hook. And they just have, this is what I like about supporting third-party app development, is people create these really, really like hyper-focused, very specific tools that Google and Apple are never going to make. Like the Apple people are like, here's our calendar app. It's the best calendar app for most people. Google is like, here, we've got our Google Docs suite. This is the best thing for most people who want this kind of experience on the web. They're not going to do everything. They're not going to add every single thing that but yeah. Look, what it does is it basically somehow they have coded it so that almost anything you're looking at, if you are on a Mac, whatever is the foreground piece of data, a website, a Google Slides presentation, a task in OmniFocus, a note in Apple Notes, an email, I'm just looking here, a document like in like a Word document, whatever is the data you are looking at, Hook will generate a link and copy it to your clipboard into that data so that if it is something that does not have a URL address that you can like copy and paste out of a web browser, it'll somehow, like if you put it in the notes field of your task, like I need to finish working on my sectional schedule and distribute this by next Monday, I can have a link to the page. I make that in Pages. So I can have a link straight to that Pages file. And then I don't have to think about where that is. It's linking me straight to it, not a copy of it that I've dragged into my To-Do app, but I link directly into that document. And I don't know, that's cool stuff, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we're kind of like touching on these state of topics here, I'd say. I mean, do you have any kind of like general sentiments about like where, because we've talked about these topics before, like kind of where in 2022, like what is going on new with to-do apps, note apps? I know we also have here the state of document apps. I think it probably is worth mentioning the difference between a note and a document organizing kind of application.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to 30 years ago, that's something that our grandparents understood very well. Yeah. Grandmother had her recipes on note cards. Yep. They didn't need to be on 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper with a 1-inch margin all the way around, done on a typewriter. The form was not that important. It was the information that was important. The flexibility was important. The ability to take them and kind of put them in any order. and write little things in the margins. But then when it came time for the church to put together a cookbook, that's when grandmother hauled out the typewriter and put a piece of paper in there and put it in, document form. So then when we get computers and we get hard drives, well, a document is our only choice. If we're going to enter it and store it, it's got to be stored as a document that lives inside a folder, that lives inside a folder, that lives inside a folder. Well, then when we get our mobile devices that don't have the nice folder structure, at least back, when the iPhone came out, and you didn't want to have to download document after document and it take up space on your phone. Well, now we have the need, and now we have the need being filled by things like Evernote for digital notes, where what's important is being able to get information in there easily, retrieve it easily, be able to do that from anywhere and share that information with other people. So much of the stuff that I have in Evernote, it's never going to be printed anywhere. It doesn't need to have 8.5 by 11, all that kind of stuff. But what I do need is the ability to get stuff in there quickly. So like if I'm a band director and on the internet, I am reading, this wonderful article on, clarinet articulation, or here's some wonderful diagrams of alternate fingering. It's like, I want that. I want to save that somewhere in my system. It's one click on the Evernote web clipper and bam, it's in Evernote. And now I can forget about it and go on. And there are no stupid page breaks. There are no page breaks on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Why does think of how many things you copy and you paste into a Word document, and every time you've got a photograph or a chart or any kind of image, we got these weird page breaks where it wouldn't quite all fit on this page. So then you got a half a page that's blank because that image is now bumped over to the next page. Well, Evernote doesn't have pages, so it makes it so nice. And I think we need both. There are times where you need a place to put a finished document. Okay? Google Drive, iCloud, Dropbox, OneDrive, all that's great. But when it doesn't have to be on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, 1-inch margins all the way around, and it's just the information that's important, Evernote or OneNote, or the others that you mentioned, DEVONthink, was it?
DEVONthink, yeah. Mm-hmm.
DEVONthink, yeah. Obsidian, Rome. There are a number of them, but I think the major players, Evernote, and if you're in the heavy Microsoft environment, OneNote is the parallel there.
Yeah, OneNote is good. It definitely works in a distinctively different way than Evernote. It's like got some very major strengths that I'm attracted to, like freehand drawing anywhere on the document, and you can copy and paste a couple of cells of an Excel spreadsheet in there, and it looks and retains its formatting. It's never stuck with me quite like Evernote did when I used it. I actually got to ask you this. Have you heard of, this is something that I think was announced maybe about 2 years ago, and I have not seen any news about it. But, Microsoft a few years ago at their developer conference announced that they were doing an initiative where they were going to start to take, because, Microsoft is sort of like the classic example of these are apps that are installed on your computer, and they make these, they have a little bit of this tie to the previous, physical world. Like you're publishing a document, this is something that has like margins on it, and you're going to print it, and there's pages. But like a lot of their tools have become increasingly more web savvy. Like you can collaborate on a Microsoft Office document the same way you can a Google Doc. It's not as easy, but it's doable for the people who live entirely, like if your workplace is paying for you to use an Outlook, or I guess now, what do they call it now? Exchange email address, and like you have the Microsoft 365 suite, it's definitely worth a shot using this stuff instead of Google. And then, of course, OneNote plays into all of it as well. But anyway, what Microsoft had announced was not only can you easily get data from one thing to another, but the data will have one truth, and you can, using their web backend, you can have those things linked to each other, but in a web-specific way. So in my example of taking, let's say that I've got a document for managing my music library, and it's in Excel. And I have like maybe 3 or 4 sheets. Maybe there's an instrument sheet. There's a music sheet. There's like a sheet that lists like kids who have borrowed things. Maybe I just want like some of my solo ensemble literature to exist in a OneNote note alongside an image or like a couple of tasks. Well, not when you copy those cells over into OneNote, it's not just that you like see that data presented in the same way, but it actually like talks back to the Excel spreadsheet. So like all of your Microsoft data can be copied and pasted into other Microsoft apps in a way that's meaningful. For example, I'll give you another one. I could email you a task list of shared like things we need to do in preparation for the band concert, and you would get that task list in your email. And if you did a couple tasks, you could check them off straight from the email. And then if I'm in the Microsoft To Do app, those tasks would be similarly checked off just from you having checked them in email. I've heard nothing about this since. It sounds, to be honest, like a dream to me and something that most average people would not understand. But it also,
Right, yeah.
It seems so cool to me. Have you heard anything about that?
I have not. I have not.
This is sort of like one of my computing dreams is to have more software have this like the smarts and the flexibility of the web stuff like the Google things, but also to have like really high performant, excellently designed apps that can be installed on a computer, and to sort of have the best of both worlds, to be able to link into any piece of data from any type of application, even a creative tool like a score editor, but then to be able to take little bits like Dorico will do this cool thing where you can select 4 measures and generate a frame of those 4 measures in as like a PNG file, which you can like put inside of a document you're making, like a Pages or a Word document. And to me, I'm thinking like, what if apps could like take that kind of content, but like I could make like it could be living inside of my Google Docs. And if I changed my score, that little snippet of it inside my Google Doc, I don't know. This is like what I want the future to be. Right here is what I'm telling you. My pipe dream.
Yeah, and I think we're definitely getting closer and closer to that. And like the things that are happening with Evernote in the last year, they've introduced Evernote Home, kind of a dashboard basically, where you open it up and here's your calendar that is pulling from your Google Calendar. So you're not able to make changes there. You keep your Google Calendar up to date, and automatically in Evernote, there is your calendar. Along with other neat things, here a list of recently updated notes there on that Evernote Home and so forth. But then to take the calendar a step further, let's say what we're doing right now, recording this podcast episode. Well, of course, that's something I'm going to have on my Google Calendar so that I show up at the right time. And of course, the link for me to get into the room was right there. And so that's on my Evernote calendar. But then I'm also preparing things to talk about during this time. So that's an Evernote note. Create an Evernote note and start typing out my thoughts. Now, how am I going to get back to that Evernote note when we record this? So from that little Evernote calendar appointment, I can click and create a blank note, or click and link any note to that appointment, so that when the appointment comes, or we're going into a meeting or whatever it is, and it's like, God, where are the notes that I'd put together for this? Click, and there is the note for me. And it puts in the proper heading and everything. So if I create a note for this meeting from my calendar, it's putting in the heading, who the meeting is with, and what's the date and what's the time, and the URL, the Zoom link, any of the information was on the calendar. It's there as part of the note. And then other things that they've come up with, Evernote Tasks. So if you don't already have a task manager of choice, think about all the times that you're taking notes on something and things come to mind you actually need to do. And you can put them right there in the body of the note and designate it as a task. And so Evernote goes through and harvests these things that you've designated as tasks, puts them in a list. You can give them due dates. And then when you click on that particular task, there's a link back to the note that it came from so that you can revisit the context in which that task had been created.
Yeah, this is definitely the kind of line of thinking that I like. I'm actually curious, because of how committed to Evernote you are, I'm wondering if there's any particular reason other than just momentum with your other task apps, like that Evernote has not just become sort of your everything app, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, right now, Evernote Tasks, like it doesn't have repeating tasks. It doesn't have subtasks. It is, to me, it's really in its infancy. And what I've actually been talking in terms of, and hopefully going to get the right person's ear on this, is instead of Evernote Task being a competitor to Remember the Milk and OmniFocus and Todoist and so forth and so on, open up the API so that if I create a task in an Evernote note, that goes over and creates a task in Remember the Milk or OmniFocus. And since 2013, I've actually been using a service called TaskClone that actually does that. So I've had the ability since 2013 to create a task in an Evernote note, and it automatically create a task for me in my task list of choice. I used to use Doodle, and then in like 2018 went to Remember the Milk. It creates the task, and in the notes section of the task, it creates a link back to the note in Evernote. So here's my task, and now I'm one click away from the context in which it was created. So, I mean, it's fantastic.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I love that tool. I definitely used it with OmniFocus when I was an Evernote user, and it's great. You just sometimes, I'm using it now with the daily note feature in Obsidian and in Craft. Like Craft anyway, because of its great export tools, you just select the to-dos in your document at the end of the day that you didn't finish, and then you click an OmniFocus icon on the sidebar, and then they all just kind of get scooped up into your OmniFocus inbox. But yeah, these things talking to each other is certainly what I want. And again, like for me, some of these, OmniFocus is a great example of like being as powerful and customizable as it is. They don't have an API. But it seems like Todoist being probably, I would say, like the most capable of the web-based options, and having the strongest free tier. That's typically the one I recommend to most people. And because of its APIs, you can do crazy stuff like this thing that now exists in Craft. Actually, Obsidian has a cool plugin where you like to type in your a special key that Todoist gives you, and then you can like embed very specific tagged lists or project lists inside of your notes, and they actually like sync both ways. It's just super cool to see this kind of stuff happening, and I just want it for all of my tools to be able to do this.
Absolutely, yeah.
Today, I would like to introduce you to my Scale Exercise Play-Along tracks with trap beats, available for sale at robbyburns.com. These trap beat play-alongs include over 72 audio recordings, each of which includes a count-off, a trap beat at 70 beats per minute, and a tuning drone playing both the tonic and each note of the scale in just intonation, so your ensemble can learn to play in tune, develop steady, sustained tone, and blend with other sounds. These drones are stacked over top engaging trap beats that help students to practice at slower tempos while developing steadiness of time and a better concept of how the beat is subdivided. The scale exercises include whole notes, half notes, quarter notes, eighth notes, scale in thirds, and a mini scale with an arpeggio at the end in all 12 keys. I've also included 3 speed variations of a Remington exercise, so band ensembles can work on their favorite tone and technical exercises, whether they be from a method book or of your own invention. The tracks are $15, but for $40, you can get the stems to the tracks in Logic Pro and GarageBand format, so that you can do things like speed them up and slow them down, change the pitch, add your own accompaniment. Take out my voice and add your own.
And 2 and 3 and go.
Or even sequence the tracks together to completely automate your ensemble warm-up. These tracks are perfect for running through your Google Meet, Zoom, or virtual teaching platform of choice, or for running through the loudspeakers at the beginning of your in-person rehearsal. Check them out now at robbyburns.com/store. Well, we didn't talk much about Calendar or Contacts, which are two other essentials.
Yeah, I feel like those are the two things where people come the closest to being there.
Right.
When you ask the average person to, look up a physical address or a phone number, they're going to pull out their phone. Nobody pulls out that leather-bound address book anymore. So we're there. In fact, I think we've been there for quite a while with our contacts. With Calendar, we're not as close, but I think most of us are now with a digital calendar. The thing that I'm seeing more and more of, and hope to continue to see a lot more of, though, is leveraging that calendar with tools like Calendly or You Can Book Me. So, you think of how much time we waste on emails going back and forth going, hey, I want to schedule a meeting with you. What's your calendar look like on Thursday? And then the other person emails back 2 days later. No, on a Thursday I'm booked. What about Monday morning about 9? And then you email back, no, that's not good for me. It's like playing email battleship. You're both trying to hit a calendar that neither person can see. So with Calendly, with the ability to say, boom, here's a link. Click the link. It's hooked to my calendar. You can see when I'm available. You click something that's good for you, and I can be driving down the road, and now it's on my calendar. I'm not having to then respond to an email. Oh, let me put that over on my calendar now. And it automatically goes on your calendar, sends you a little email that it's happened. And with mine, I've got it set to, since so many of my meetings now are Zoom, if you click on my link and you click a time, it's not only going to book it on my calendar, but it's going to send you a Zoom link. It creates the Zoom link on both my end and your end. So the only thing I have to do is show up at the right time, and my digital calendar is going to chime 15 minutes before that meeting. All I have to do is pay attention to the reminder and sit down, click the link. It couldn't be easier. But we've got to leverage these tools. So like one of the things in the third section of the book, when we do talk about calendar, a lot of it is from the standpoint of getting away from email. Hey, we're going to have a faculty meeting on Tuesday. Don't send people an email about that. Send them a calendar invitation so that they click, yes, I'm going, and it's automatically on their calendar. Instead of 40 people having to read an email and 40 people going to their calendar to manually enter it there. Let's take what had been a 40-person job and make it a one-person job. It's easy enough to do, but we tend to do what we've always done, and we didn't have these tools back then.
Yeah. I always like to stay as many different useful, like small tools, like Hook, for example, that I use. I also like prefer to stay inside of the same tool for the thing it's good at, like the calendar, like a meeting.
Absolutely.
I'd love to think about a meeting I have inside of my calendar rather than my email, for sure. I'll just shout out another small group of developers here. Flexibits. They make a great calendar app called Fantastical and a great contact manager called Cardhop. Fantastical, so it's so steep, the subscription price, and I was like, when they switched to this subscription pricing, I was like, I don't know about this, it's pretty steep. I feel like it's like $30 or $40 a year, something wild, but then it's like they're coming out with crazy good features, and then I'm like, oh, okay, so supporting developers, you get to, not only do you get to feel like you're supporting this great software development, but then you're like really, I mean, it still seems like it's really paying off with them because they added a couple things this year. First of all, Fantastical is it's a calendar app that you can install on your computer, but it is, of course, you can plug in your Google Calendar credentials, your iCloud calendar, your Microsoft. I have all three funneling through the same app because I use all three of those services for varying things. And but they've added some cool features lately, like Todoist and other task apps can now, their APIs are integrated. So if you do prefer to every now and then see a do task in your calendar, you can just have your Todoist stuff show up there. The Zoom and Google Meet linking is like automatic now, so it will like smartly figure out if meetings are going to take place virtually and add a one-click button straight to the little calendar event itself to launch into that meeting. And then Calendly is something that I've used for a long time, but now Fantastical built their own version of it that exists inside of the app. You don't have to you have to initially launch out to a website to set up the templates, but basically like I have a private studio size that's pretty large right now, and it's just on the verge of like me needing either someone to manage some of it for me or needing some like automation tools, but it's just not quite big enough where I've ever been able to rationalize the cost or the overhead of learning one. So I kind of still like do a lot of my rescheduling through email and text messages, which is fine. It's a little bit much. Like, for example, we're on spring break right now, and some of my students wanted to move their lesson time or cancel, and that was just like, a lot of text messages going around for a few days. But what I can do is Fantastical, I can basically create a template that says, all right, for my 30-minute lesson people, I teach on these 3 nights between this window of time and this window of time. Look into my calendars, but only into my Google Calendar where my lesson calendar is. But look at all of my calendars, but only look at my Google Calendar within these blocks to see like when am I not teaching a lesson within this window, and then offer a list of times to the other person. I mean, it's basically Calendly, but the fact that it's like integrated into my, you know what I mean? Because then Fantastical sends me a notification once they choose a time. I can either have them just go ahead and sign up, and then it adds it straight to my calendar, or I can have a little confirmation show up in the Fantastical app. I just think it's like it takes a couple of extra little like micro steps out of the situation. Calendly, of course, has a free tier. Did you just say a minute ago what they are limited by in the free tier? I think it's how many calendars you can integrate.
It is. You can integrate one calendar.
Okay.
Yeah, with the free plan.
Got it. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. And they have just come out, I say just come out, but in the last several months with, they've always had the ability to, you and I are trying to schedule a time to get together. All right. So that's what it's done. But then what about the times when we're trying to find a time when 6 of us can all get together at the same time? And so what we've had is Doodle. Doodle's been sort of the go-to place for that. Calendly has now integrated that, and it's part of their free plan.
Yeah, that's great. It's something that everyone I know who knows about it, I'm always, it's a little bit of a like, it's not like as widely known as Evernote, I feel like, or Google Docs, but like definitely for the people who I know who use it, swear by it and you would never do it any other way after you had it automated for you.
It's just sort of become second nature for, hey, send me your Calendly link. I've really gotten away from asking people, hey, what's your calendar look like on Tuesday, blah, blah, blah. I just say, let's get together. Here's my Calendly link, and just let them pick a time. And if it's somebody that's pretty tech savvy, I say, here's my Calendly link. Or if you'd rather send me your scheduling link, but we're not just back with the back and forth and what's your day look like on Tuesday. No, that's that's past.
Totally. Yeah, and a little tip I'll add here to making those kinds of transactions a little bit more efficient is I'll actually use TextExpander, which is a Windows Mac tool that basically allows you to save snippets of text that expand into bigger snippets of text. So like the letter BD expands to bass drum for me. I abbreviate books I type often, vocabulary words, but also like pre-made emails. And so one thing I've done is I've created a snippet called 30-minute lesson that basically, when I type that into a text message with a parent of a private student, it basically turns that snippet of text, it transforms it into, hi, here are some available times for a 30-minute lesson, and then the link to the URL to the Fantastical page that they can view. That's for my 30-minute lesson slots. Will all like a little sound effect will happen, and then that's now the contents of the message. I hit enter, and that makes it easy. You use a Chrome extension that does text expansion, don't you?
Well, I used Text Blaze.
Okay.
It's something I've been using. I think about the past year. I did have a Chrome extension before that, but this does. This does so much more, and even the free version is very powerful. You can have up to 20 different snips saved with the free version, and then of course you can change them out. If there's one you don't need anymore, you can delete that one, put something else. So you can have 20 that are active at any point. And like you say, like say with my Calendly link, I've got a little snippet. I think it's /CAL. And it types out, here's a link to my calendar, pick anything that's convenient for you. And it then types out the link and makes it a hyperlink. So I can bold and italicize. I can format it any way I want to. And then just typing that little shortcut puts it out there for me. So, you think about all the situations that you handle over and over and over again. Or those emails that you start the same way. Thank you so much for your concern. Or that obligatory paragraph at the end. Thank you so much for bringing this to my attention. We appreciate the parental involvement, so forth and so on. All the pleasantries. Just create a little snippet for that, so that you hit a couple of keys and it's typing it out for you. I remember one part of one project I was involved with. It was, and I would get emails on almost a daily basis with the same little issue, and the solution was that they had failed to put in information in one of about 6 different places. So it was like the solution to their problem was either this or this or this or this or this. So I could take 15 minutes to type out all that scenario, but I'd saved a snippet where, bam, there's the whole thing. And I'm sure people thought, good gracious, he certainly went into great detail responding to me. No, it took about 2 seconds, just hit a couple of keys, and there it is.
Yep. It's text expansion is killer for me. It's just absolutely essential for the reason, and it's so versatile. I mean, I used it to remembering the formatting for how to label the figures in my book was Oxford wanted some very specific formatting for that, and so I just had this whole text expander system I built of I would just type 1 or 2 keystrokes, and that would properly format which chapter I was writing and which image I was referencing. And yeah, cool stuff. Do you want to talk anything more before we go to the segments?
I'm good there. I think we've really covered the kinds of things that are in the book. So as far as, and of course, I'll be honest, one thing I'd love for this is for everybody who's listening to this to go buy a copy of the book. And I think through what we've talked about now, hopefully it's piqued people's interest, that, digital task manager, digital notes with Evernote, the Calendly thing, this it's the nuts and bolts of the things that we're doing every day or need to be doing every day. And I wrote it in a way, it's all stories. I mean, you're going to fall in love with the characters that are in there as you read about the problems that they're facing, and you're going, gosh, I kind of have the same problem. And then here is how a technology tool makes life easier for them, and it's something that you could have today. It's kind of like Dorothy and the Ruby Slippers, She could have gotten back to Kansas anytime she wanted to if she just had read the owner's manual on how to use the Ruby Slippers.
Part of the thing with me and technology is just I'm just trying to creatively solve problems for myself. That is something that once I've experienced 5 or 6 really creative uses of one of these tools, then you start to sort of imagine like how it can solve other problems for you. I never try to invent problems for technology to solve me. I think that's where people tend to get hung up. That's one of like the technology hang-ups, right? Is like thinking
it's
that like
a solution in search of a problem.
exactly right. Like thinking like, oh, I have all these buttons I see everywhere. How will I ever learn to use them? Like, don't is what I say. Like, bend it to your solutions rather than the other way around. Well, I certainly am excited to, as always, you give me, these tools are all very similar in these different categories: notes, documents, tasks, calendars, and things. But like there also are like these little subtle differences, and you always, with your perspective on the things you're using, challenge me to go look at them and then see what else is out there. Because and of course I recommend everyone check out your books. I see they're in the background in your frame there.
Yeah, have those behind me.
I should have that just in every Zoom call. Do you have them in every Zoom call? Because I love that they're
Right, yeah, that and of course, as people, will this be audio only, or will people also be seeing us?
So, well, I can make ways for people to somehow encounter a part of this conversation in video. The video version of the podcast is unfortunately automated, and the easiest way to do that is basically like YouTube just generates a static, rather Libsyn, who hosts this show.
Yeah, just a picture.
It's just basically the show art with. But it will be on YouTube. But what I did is someone in a recent episode actually like shared their screen and showed some stuff. So I made like a short, like sort of like a tease, like here's a clip from the episode, but in video format where the people could see what she was doing on screen.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I don't know.
But for those that, those who are hearing and they're wondering, what is in the background? So I'm here in my home office. So I'm at my desk. I swivel 90 degrees. I'm at my computer with the microphone and the lights all set up. And then behind me are the diplomas and things. And so I have a music stand with a copy of my most current book and the one right before that behind me, so that it's kind of a nice little touch as I'm on Zoom calls and things, sort of a constant reminder to folks that I do have a book that's out there. And then there's also a Revolutionary War pistol behind me that had been my grandmother's, passed on to her from generations before that, and plaques on the wall and that that good kind of stuff. So nice place to call home. And I don't use a green screen or anything like that. Just prefer to have what's naturally behind me.
Right. No, I'm the same way. I feel like the instruments behind me are often conversation pieces.
Yes.
You of course can't like really see any of them, but there's like marimbas and vibraphones over here, and back there behind that table of mugs that I need to bring upstairs is timpani and 2 drum sets here, and some electronic
Very
input devices,
cool.
another marimba, some guitars.
Almost like a music store there at home.
Yeah, exactly. Well, awesome. Well, let's hit some segmented things. Let's see. I guess we could just go straight in order. I've got an app of the week I want to highlight here. It's called MaskerAide, and I'm sorry, it's an iPhone thing. I'm sorry, I should have done a better pick for you. This is developed by Casey Liss, who is one of 3 hosts on a technology podcast I like to listen to called the Accidental Tech Podcast, and he has a couple years back, I believe, went independent and is doing pretty much full-time podcasting and app development. And he's got a couple of really nice, speaking of utilities that do one thing and do them really well, he's got a couple of utilities that I feel like he's sort of developed them almost like inspired by like family and kids. Like one of his apps, I'll link it in the show notes, but the name is not coming to me right now. But basically it's like for that moment where you hand someone your phone to look at some pictures of your kids, but you don't want them like to see the wrong thing. So he's got an app that basically just, you choose some images and you hand them basically, or like an album on your phone, and then you hand that to them instead, and they can't like go like looking around or accidentally like get out of the app. But his new one, MaskerAide, actually is similarly solving a problem, but I actually feel like it has a teacher angle to it. What it does is, and lots of things do this, but this just does them in a very, very efficient and elegant way. It takes a photo and smartly finds the faces of the people in the photo, and then it adds emoji over them. So it's kind of has like a privacy angle. And he developed it with the idea in mind that he didn't want to constantly be putting his kids' faces on the internet. Or actually, I assume that's a big part of it. But basically, like what it does is it's a quick way to block out faces in the background. You can choose. I think the paid version is just a couple bucks, maybe $2, but you can kind of like you have like the full range of emoji on your phone to choose from. And then I think there's like I forget what else the premium version does. I think maybe there's like a limit to how many faces it'll automatically add the emoji for in the free version. But basically, this is a cool little app. And as you can imagine, the teacher application is like, let's say you're trying to share something online that you're doing in your classroom, and maybe you have you don't want to even, you have some kids who are on the no photo list, or maybe you just don't even want to like put anyone on the internet. You take a photo of your class and run it through MaskerAide, which is kind of a fun play on words. MaskerAide, but also MaskerAide.
Yeah.
The A and aid it's MaskerAide, like it's an aid. It's helping you to mask things. So it's it'll just put a little like smiley emoji on top of all of your students' faces, and you can like kind of share what you're doing to Twitter or Facebook or whatever that might be. So anyway, kind of a nice little fun utility. I like to support independent developers who are doing things creatively. So there you go, MaskerAide.
Wow, cool. Right. Well, mine is not necessarily new, but I've been talking a lot to people about it because of how Google has sort of made it front and center. But Google Lens, and it's like doing a Google search from the physical environment. So in other words, it will do things like, here's a plant out in the yard. What kind of flower is that? Well, you can just hit Google Lens, point your phone at it, hit Google Lens. It's like your camera coming up, and you do the equivalent of really what would be taking a picture. But what comes back is this, okay, well, here's the name of the flower. Here are other pictures from the internet of that flower. Here's how to take care of the flower. Here's where you can buy that flower. Or, you're in a store and you take a picture of a pair of shoes. And here comes all kind of information back on what kind of shoes those are, where you can get them, that sort of thing. What I really love, you're looking at a book and you want to copy that text, well, you could lay it on a Xerox machine and you've got a picture of the text, and you can do some OCR, that sort of thing. But what this does, it recognizes it as text and says, where do you want to send this? You want to copy it to the clipboard of your desktop computer? Yeah. And then what you have there is editable text. So it's like the ability to copy text from a physical book and paste it as digital text somewhere else. And the accuracy is absolutely amazing. And if I happen to point it at text that's in a foreign language, in front of my eyes, it suddenly now becomes English. It just, it does the translation right in front of your eyes. And when I say, Google has made it a little more front and center by doing this. We've always had on our Android phones that little Google search window, and it's had the little microphone where you could type the microphone and speak your search. Now it's added a little picture of a camera. You just tap that little picture of the camera, and boom, there's Google Lens running for you. So they have made it super easy to get to. And when people start using it and realize how flexible it is and how easy it is, that thing's a game changer.
Yeah, I love that this is becoming such a popular thing. My phone actually, as of the fall, will now find text automatically in certain types of data. Not every single thing, but like the main one is photos. So like if you're going through your photos and you were standing in front of Chipotle, I don't know why this is what's coming to my mind, but if you're in front of a Chipotle in a picture, then now the word Chipotle will like search. So when you type it in the search, will like, text hits, as well as like searching for like what, like the word dog or like party or things, but now actual text in the images, and it's like selectable and copyable as well, which is that's like a thing that I think more people should definitely try. It's cool. It's like you take a even if you're just looking at a picture of a menu to a restaurant and there's like a phone number on it, you can now like hold your thumb where the phone number is, and then just like get an option to call that phone number. Yeah, pretty cool stuff. Well, I guess let's go in order here. I've been listening to an album this week by Gabriel Kahane. It's called Magnificent Bird. And he's just one of our favorite singer-songwriters, and he has very, very beautiful arranging skills. He very tastefully has he has definitely some, for lack of a better word, classical chops. Like he writes really well for strings and winds. So he has a very like subtle sort of like chamber ensemble flourishes, sort of like interwoven with what's otherwise will typically be like a guitar or a piano driven kind of a song. And he's really like kind of also competent with electronics. So he has like is very, very effective use of arpeggiation, synthesizers, and other kinds of digital textures. And he's just like a real tasteful and thoughtful songwriter and musician. His new album is, I wouldn't necessarily consider it like a huge evolution in the sound, but it's definitely like very distilled. Like I just feel like all of the things that have sort of defined his previous musical experiences and recording projects are sort of all like very, very tastefully captured in this record. And so it's just a very well conceived, very well arranged album. It's been on constantly for the past 2 weeks.
Good deal. Let's see. My album of the week, it's kind of really not an album, but it's the Marine Band YouTube channel. And every year, now we're recording this in early April, and every year the Marine Band sponsors the Sousa's March Mania. Kind of a little play on words. It's always in March. It always has to do with marches. And of course, it's happening during March Madness with basketball and all that kind of stuff. And so just like basketball, they have a bracket, and every day people get to vote on a pair of marches for that day, and the winner by popular vote goes on to the next round, and all that kind of good stuff. Well, the neat thing, this year's winner was not a Sousa March at all. There was this little march called the Wildcat March that in the first round happened to be the winner and went on. And then it's like the more you listen to this march, the more it just grows on you. And it continued to just advance and advance all the way to the final. So it was Entry of the Gladiators versus this Wildcat March. When you listen to it, it's obvious when you get to the trio that this is somebody's alma mater. And it turns out it's Northwestern University's alma mater. So this thing wins, and it turns out that the composer, and nobody knew this, everybody's just voting on these things based on, just hearing them, and they're all performed by the Marine Band. But the composer is a current clarinet player in the Marine Band, just a staff sergeant who wrote this thing. But it's called the Wildcat March. It's fantastic. And I just think that channel, the Marine Band YouTube channel, just needs to be the one that needs to get more hits than it's getting. Everybody needs to go over there. Band directors, band students, such a wonderful free treasure for all of us.
Yeah, totally. I love that it's not an album too. It's always good. I think a couple of episodes ago I put music of the week, and I probably should more permanently change that to the name of the segment, because it doesn't have to be an album. So yeah, cool. Well, here's my tech tip of the week. I think it's become increasingly easy to take a screenshot, whether you like snip it a little like bit of what's on your screen or just take a snapshot of the whole screen. But what, the ease at which you can do that these days and copy the results to your clipboard and then like paste it into an email or like in a document, maybe with like a how-to instructions for one of your students on like where to click when you're using, when you're submitting an assignment or using your learning management software. I often am finding that I want to have that same efficiency with moving pictures. So in other words, like a screencast. And sometimes it's just like something so quick that it would really make more sense as a GIF than a screencast or a video or something that someone clicks on and goes to YouTube. I just want it to be like 3 or 6 seconds long. And so I'm using a great tool on my computer right now called CleanShot, which actually I think it was, I forget if it was actually last episode or a forthcoming episode, but basically it's made by another Ukrainian developer called MacPaw, And actually, now I'm thinking about it, my Ukrainian developer shout out might actually be in a future episode, not in last episode, but forget about it. This is a very cool. I'm sorry, CleanShot is not made by them, but they do make an application that will get a future or past shout out called SetApp, which is basically like a subscription of like over 100 different Mac apps. And it's like with an educator discount, like maybe $6 or something a month. And CleanShot is just one of the many, many apps you get. And it kind of like works the same way that like the system feature works, where you clip your screenshot. But what it does is it actually kind of puts a little thumbnail of your recently shot image in the lower corner of your computer, where before you actually save it to your desktop, you can like choose to there's some like little buttons on the thumbnail that will allow you to copy it to your clipboard and then not save it to the desktop, or annotate it a little bit, like if I need to blur out some sensitive student data or circle something in a red pen. It kind of like adds some like really intuitive levels of workflow to the app. But one of the other cool things it does is actually if you customize a slightly different keyboard shortcut, like I think mine to take a screenshot is Shift Command 3 or 4, depending on if I want to take the whole screen or just a section of it. And then I think Shift Control Command 2, you can customize it. But basically what it does is instead of taking a still image, it just starts recording your screen. And then you can turn it into a video file or a GIF. And this has made it so much easier to just, boom, like type a keystroke, select a part of my screen, do a little thing, hit escape, and then like instantly I have a GIF that I can copy to my clipboard and then paste it into a text message or an email.
Neat. All right, mine is, and this is for Windows folks, turn on Windows Clipboard History. Once you realize this thing is here, it is fantastic. Think about all the times that you copy something, you copy and paste. You got a bunch of it to do, so you go back, you copy this and paste it over there. Back over here, copy the first name, paste the first name over here. Go back and copy the student's last name, paste it over here. And of course, you're having to go back and forth because, as we know, when you copy something, it replaces the last thing you copied on the clipboard. What this allows you to do is go copy, paste. So here's what to do, folks. Just copy something, Control-C. And instead of doing Control-V to paste, hold down the Windows key, Windows-V. A little message will come up and ask you if you want to turn on Windows Clipboard History. Yeah, you just tell it, yeah, I want to do that. And so from here on out, Control-C to copy. Windows V brings up a list of the last 15 things that you copied, and so you can just pick any one of them. It saves an incredible amount of time. So it's called Windows Clipboard History. And Robby, I'm including a link to a post that I did on that where there's a video that people will be able to watch and see that in action.
That sounds awesome. I only started using Clipboard History a couple of years ago, and I don't know what I was thinking to not be using it. Like the amount of times, just something as simple as I'm going to like send a message on Canvas to two different classes, but it's the same message. And so I type out the subject line of the message, and then I type out the body of the message. And I'm like, okay, I'm about to copy and paste that message, but wait, I want the subject line to be consistent too. Copy, head over into, my next message once I've hit send. And then those are both just like right on the clipboard history. I use an app called Alfred to do that on my computer. A couple of other recommendations for those on Mac are Pastebot, Yoink, and Copied. And I just it's just one of those like peace of mind sanity things because you can copy anything. Like this is whatever, it's like also not just collecting text, but images, formatted text, files, like anything. I assume that's how the Windows one works.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you have Control-C'd it, it's there.
Yeah. And even if you've done like a little screen grab that's on your clipboard, well, it could be 15 of those. Think about times that you're, like in a Zoom meeting and somebody's showing some slides and it's like, oh, gosh, I want to grab some of those slides. Well, instead of having to copy and paste that first one somewhere and then come back and copy the next one and paste it somewhere, you can just snip, and there's 15 of them on your clipboard, and you can just paste into an Evernote note or wherever you'd want to keep those kinds of things.
Yeah, totally. Life-saving. Turn it on immediately.
Yeah.
So glad you brought that up. That has not been a tip, I don't think. Maybe, at least not recently, and it's like absolutely essential. So, awesome. Well, I just want to shout out where people can find you on the web before we kind of close things off here. Well, do you want to share like where people can find you and your book and learn more about you? And
well, come over to my website, frankbuck.org. So first thing, when you get there, hop on my email list. Once a week, you get an email from me lets you know about new content I've created, all that good kind of stuff. And then while you're there, just peruse. I've been blogging since like 2005. So of course, there's some really outdated blog posts there. Everything you'd want to know about your BlackBerry is there for the two people that still use a BlackBerry. But then there's all kind of stuff that is just so relevant. The things that we've talked about here today: Google Lens, Windows Clipboard history, videos on those kind of things. So just a lot of stuff there on the website, and of course information on the books is there as well. But you can get organized digitally. Just go over to Amazon, for example, just search for it, and it's there. Hope it's something that makes life easier for a lot of band directors out there.
Well, it's been such a pleasure to have you again. I'm sure we'll do this again, but thank you for coming and sharing, of course, your book and your modern day expertise. All right, well, I'm Robby Burns. Thanks for listening to Music Ed Tech Talk. You can find the show's page, show notes for the episode, and my blog at musicedtechtalk.com. You can subscribe to blog posts through an RSS app of your choice, and you can subscribe to the podcast in the podcast app of your choice. You can now get blog posts delivered right into your email inbox once a week. Please rate and review this show in the podcast app. It absolutely helps. It'll take a second and just a few taps. Word of mouth is helpful too, so please spread the word about it. Learn more about my music and teaching career at robbyburns.com. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube at Robby Burns. Please consider supporting me on Patreon at patreon.com/musicedtechtalk. All support tiers get perks, but even the base tier gets you a monthly video update with an app and music recommendation and some tech tips. Of course, also access to the Music Ed Tech Talk Discord community, where you can chat with other supporters and guests of the show about music, apps, pedagogy, lesson ideas, tech support, and more. It's a fun place to be, and I hope to connect with you soon. Thanks to this week's sponsor, Scale Exercise Play Along Tracks. Be sure to check it out, and see you next time.